I'm Emily with CAL FIRE, and I'm part of Captain Cal's fire safety education team. Today I'd like to talk to you about a tool that we use when we have an emergency. It's called 911. The first thing to know about calling 911 is that there's 3 different types of emergencies, and today we've talked a lot about a fire emergency. And when there's a fire emergency, you would get help from the fire department. Another type of emergency is a medical emergency, and that might be when somebody is really hurt or really sick and they need to go to the hospital. So you could call 911 for a medical emergency and an ambulance would come to help. The third type of emergency is crime. And crime is when someone is doing something against the law and you need help from the police department. You would get the police department for a crime emergency. The only time you would call 911 is for a real emergency. So things like a cat stuck in a tree or needing help with your homework or even ordering a pizza when you're really, really hungry is not a reason to call 911. There's different ways to call 911, and first we'll talk about a phone like this. This is a cordless phone, but it has a station that plugs into the wall with a cord. That's what we call a landline. Some houses have landlines, other houses don't. Some of you may have a phone like this, and this is a cell phone. A cell phone can call 911 as long as it has a battery charge, but every cell phone is different. So it's important to ask mom and dad how to call 911 from the cell phones that are in your house. When you call 911, a dispatcher will pick up the phone. They're going to ask you for 3 very important pieces of information. The first one is what your emergency is.
What's your emergency?
And the next one will be what is your location. Your location can be the address of where you're at, so it's really important to know the 3 parts of your address for your house or where you are. That includes the numbers on your house, the street that you live on, and the town or city that you live in. Another way to give a location, if you don't know the address, is to know the street that you're currently on and what the next nearest street is. And we call that a cross street or an intersection. The third way to identify a location is with the use of a landmark. Now, a landmark is really important because you may not know where you are, you may not know what cross streets you're on, but if you say, I'm at a place that everybody knows, like the park or a school or even a store like Walmart, and the city that you're in, they'll still be able to get you the help that you need. So now that you've told the dispatcher what your emergency is and what your location is, they're then going to ask you who you are and what your telephone number is, so that if they have more questions, they can call you back. When you give them your telephone number, you need to give them the area code, and that's the 3 numbers that come before your telephone number. So sometimes you might find that you accidentally called 911. And when you accidentally call 911, it's very important not to hang up. You need to talk to the dispatcher. They're going to ask you some questions and make sure there isn't a real emergency. And then when they're ready, they'll tell you when it's time to hang up. Anytime you're talking to an emergency dispatcher, you don't hang up until they tell you to. You never play with 911, and it's not a prank. So remember, the 3 things that you need to give a dispatcher if you have an emergency and you call 911 are the type of emergency that you're having, the location that you're at, and your name and telephone number so they can call you back if they need to. And always remember, never play with 911.